Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Thank you, Prabhu. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnuvad Paramahamsa Parivar Jagataja Sutara Sutta Shri Śrimad The Divine Grace of Acharya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki BBT Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Savior of the whole world the Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityalila Bhavishta Om Vishnuvad Paramahamsa Parivar Jagataja Sutara Sutta Shri Śrimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gaudi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glory to some of the devotees All glory to some of the devotees All glory to some of the devotees All glory to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita, Additional Pastimes, chapter titled, A Visit to Boston. The Boston University engagement in spatial Marsh Chapel was poorly attended. Despite thousands of students riding the trolleys and going in and out of the luncheonettes and big gray buildings that lined both sides of Commonwealth Avenue for blocks, only a half a dozen came to Marsh Chapel to hear Swamiji. The devotees, pained and embarrassed, criticized Hamsarūpa for the turnout. Even the onstage arrangements were poor, with Prabhupada seated on a too-high, rickety table. Yet without hesitation, Prabhupada held a full program, beginning with a kirtan that lasted almost an hour. He requested Brahmananda, visiting from New York, to give an introductory speech. Then Prabhupada spoke, his voice reverberating over the sound system throughout the cavernous, empty chapel. After the lecture, Prabhupada called for questions. A boy standing at his seat and shouting to make himself heard asked, "Is this Advaita philosophy?" A challenge. The devotees could tell that this student had come with his own ideas about yoga and Advaita. "Do you know what is Advaita philosophy?" Prabhupada asked. "All is one," the boy replied. "All is one." Just as rivers enter into the ocean, so we all enter into the ultimate oneness. Srila Prabhupada replied that although the river goes to the ocean, its place in the ocean is not permanent. Again, that water evaporates into the sky, forms clouds, and falls back onto the land. To argue that spiritually everything becomes one as the rivers go to the ocean, then the boy would have to accept the actual conclusion. The water again falls back onto the land. Similarly, those spirit souls who try to merge into the absolute must again fall back into the material world. Prabhupada thoroughly defeated the impersonal notion of oneness. The boy sat down silent. There were no other questions. Talking with his disciples afterward, Prabhupada said sarcastically, "People today do not even know how to ask a good question." These impersonalists always ask the same hackneyed question about the river going into the ocean. On the way back to the temple, some of the devotees continued to grumble about Swamiji's having to go to an engagement with such a poor turnout. Brahmananda warned Satsrup that the next engagement had better not be like this one. Brahmananda Maharaj was the elder brother. Although he was maybe not the senior most, in one sense, he was the first to dance in Tompkins Square Park, along with the Chutananda. So, in that way, he was considered to be the senior most disciple. But not senior to Satsrup Maharaj, but senior, he was the first president of the temple. Prabhupada was well aware of the worldwide prestige of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge. Many Indians were sent there to study. It was, in fact, an Indian organization that invited Prabhupada to speak. When Prabhupada arrived in the evening, he found over 100 people waiting in the carpeted, luxurious student lounge where he was to lecture. Some students were sitting on the floor, while others sat on the leather-upholstered couches and chairs scattered casually throughout the room. Although it was time for the lecture to begin, the devotees had still not arrived with the paraphernalia. There was no flower garland for Prabhupada, no painting of Krishna, and no sign with the Maha Mantra. The audience waited. In anxiety, Satsrup asked Prabhupada, "Can you begin without the painting?" Looking at the large, momentous gathering, Srila Prabhupada said simply, "Painting is not important." He sat on the plain wooden platform, and since the musical instruments had not arrived, asked one of the devotees to play the Hare Krishna album. Prabhupada sat, clapping his hands in time and listening. Prabhupada spoke boldly, challenging the very concepts underlying MIT. Where in this big university, he asked, is a department for studying the technology of the soul, for understanding that principle which distinguishes a living body from a dead body, that principle which when present in the body gives life, and when absent brings death. Whereas the scientists study this all-important principle of life. Although scientists consider life to be merely chemicals or electric impulses, he argued still they are unable to assemble the chemicals and produce life. Why? There is no department in this university for answering this question, and therefore people are in ignorance. They don't know the self or the next life or the purpose of human life beyond animal activities. This science, however, is taught in the Bhagavad Gita. After the lecture, there were many questions. What is the symbolism, one student asked, of that object behind you on the stage? Prabhu turned and beheld a bare U-shaped metal stand, compliments of the janitor, beholding the painting of Krishna that never arrived. This, Prabhupada found, I do not know what this is. This is some kind of technological symbol. Another student asked, why do you wear that marking on your forehead? Why do you wear that necktie around your neck? Prabhupada snapped back, annoyed with the question. The student sat down looking at his necktie, and Prabhupada explained to him that questions about why people dress a certain way are trivial, especially considering the gravity of the present subject matter. Srila Prabhupada ki. Prabhupada's pastimes are nectar. Why do we read Prabhupada's pastimes? What's the benefit? These happened 50 years ago. The opportunity to hear the words of the spiritual master and his presence in all respects, physical, orally, they become a holy place, a tirtha. That's why they can say, sadhu sangha, sarva sastrakoi, lavamacha sadhu sangha, sarva siddhihoi. The one moment association doesn't just mean physical presence. Not that sometimes people say, wait, we're going up to the Himalayas. They have cartoons of some yogi sitting on a mountain peak, and people are traveling up to ask the question, what is the meaning of life? But just one moment's association, just like we're hearing about Srila Prabhupada here, this opportunity to associate is supremely beneficial. To hear about his activities are just like hearing about the activities of all the sages and saints that were his predecessors, our predecessors. And in this way, we get an opportunity to have a glimpse into what is the nature of a pure devotee. This is something which is rare. People can't appreciate. You know, they go to see some so-called famous person and just at a concert and they perform. You know, but these things are nothing. There's no benefit to anyone, not to the performer, not to the audience. It's this fleeting moment of entertainment has no lasting, how can you say, substance. No one will remember it. Here we're reading 50 years down about Prabhupada's pastimes, and that nectar is still tangible. But in 50 years, no one's going to be talking about a Beyonce concert. But anyway, these things are there. People don't know what's important. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 4th canto, 4th chapter, texts 4 and 5. And we'll chant 4 since it has the purport. And this chapter is titled Sati Quits Her Body. Tam anvagachan jutta vikramang satim. Tam anvagachan jutta vikramang satim. Ekang trinetra nuchara sahasrasa. Ekang Trinetra Nuchara Sahasrasam Rapashada Yaksha Maniman Madadaya Rapashada Yaksha Maniman Madadaya Puro Vishendra Starasa Gatavita Puro Vishendra Starasa Gatavita. Please chant. Taman Ragatan Dutta Vikramang Satim Ekang Chunetla Nuchara Sahasrasa Saparshada Yaksha Maniman Madadaya Puro Vishendra Tarasa Gatabhita Taman Ragatan Dutta Vikramang Satim Vikam Tarinatu Sahasrasa Ladies, Tam Her Sati Anvagachan followed Jutavikramam, leaving rapidly. Satim Sati Ekam alone. Trinetra of Lord Shiva, who has 3 eyes. Anucharaha, the followers. Sahasrasa, by thousands. Saparshada Yakshaha, accompanied by his personal associates and the yakshas. Manimatmad Adiyaha, Maniman, Mada, etc. Pura Brishandriya, having the Nandi bull in front. Tarasa, swiftly. Gatavyataha, without fear. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When they saw Sati leaving alone very rapidly, thousands of Lord Shiva's disciples, headed by Maniman and Mada, quickly followed her with his bull Nandi in front, accompanied by the yakshas. Please repeat. When they saw Sati leaving alone very rapidly, thousands of Lord Shiva's disciples, headed by Maniman and Mada, quickly followed her with his bull Nandi in front, and accompanied by the yakshas. Purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sati was going very fast so that she might not be checked by her husband, but she was immediately followed by the many thousands of disciples of Lord Shiva, headed by the yakshas, Maniman and Mada. The word Gata Vyataha, used in its connection, means without fear. Sati did not care that she was going alone, therefore she was almost fearless. The word Anuchara is also significant, for it indicates that Lord Shiva's disciples were always ready to sacrifice anything for the Lord. All of them could understand the desire of Shiva, who did not want Sati to go alone. Anuchara means those who can immediately understand the purpose of their master. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramurtamya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vasuam Pangu Mankayate Gram Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Diratanam. The drama continues to unfold, leading to a very anticlimactic conclusion. Everyone knows that Sati's name is synonymous with the rite of ritual suicide performed by certain ladies in certain castes under certain conditions. That there was immolation. They would mount the funeral pyre of their husbands and depart with them. Because this has been outlawed for many, probably almost a century at least. But it was fairly commonplace in India. And occasionally you would still hear about it in the rural areas. But it was typically not done voluntarily. In the past, it was done voluntarily because a wife would not wish to be present without her husband. And knowing full well that the conclusion in the Shastra is that she would achieve the same goal if she had faith in his spiritual practices and his activities, that he was going back home, back to God, then she could go with him. So that is the meaning of that, which is, again, not done today, but her name is still synonymous with that ritualistic act of immolation. Of course, we're jumping ahead. That's a little bit further on, but yet it's the title of the chapter, Sati quits her body. Interestingly enough, these examples, I was listening to a morning walk, a famous morning walk, and many devotees, disciples were present at that time. And Prabhu was speaking about Chota Haridas. You can read that passage. Let's see. So it's very important to understand who's asking this question. Vishnu Jan Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada, how did Chota Haridas achieve perfection by killing himself after apparently pouring water on his devotional creeper by talking to a woman? Vishnu Jan was probably the most charismatic sannyasi that, well, in our time, this is in the 70s, and he was one of the leaders of the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, along with Tamal Krishna Goswami. And they had been friends even before joining. Some friendly rivalry was also there. So he's asking this question. It was, again, famous morning walk. Just before that, Pancha Dravida had asked the question, you don't even have to hear from a self-realized soul. Simply by seeing him, you can become completely purified. The Prabhupada's response is yes. Both is required. The matches must also be right, and the wood must be also. Then there is fire. Okay. But willfully we put again water. This nonsense business makes us late. This process is already there, how to become dry. But instead of taking the process, we put water. Then how it will be ignited. The rules and regulations is the drying process. Without following the rules and regulations, if you again become victimized by Maya, then there is water and again dry. So this is going on, watering and drying, watering and drying. No straightforward process for drying. That will help, but difficulty is that wet, dry, and again water. Then Vishnujan asked the question. Srila Prabhupada, how did Chota Haridas achieve perfection by killing himself after apparently pouring water on his devotional creeper by talking to a woman? Okay, this relates to this act of immolation by sati. He wants to achieve the same destination as her husband. But she's not anyway. Lord Shiva isn't killing himself. This is a slight difference in what we understand to be the ritual act of suicide committed by the chaste wife. Prabhupada, his instance was that even an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can fall down. And if one falls down, his punishment is that suicide. There is no other punishment. He must commit suicide. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction. Otherwise, he is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant. He cannot fall down. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed this instance that even one is my personal servant. He can fall down. And if anyone, by any cause, he falls down, his punishment is he must commit suicide. This is the instruction. Tamal Krishna responds, very strict. Srila Prabhupada, oh yes, you have fallen down, you must commit suicide. No more my association. And he's speaking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this Sota Voce. Another disciple asked, Pushta Krishna, another sannyasi, is that the same as in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, for one who is honored, dishonor is worse than death? Prabhupada, yes, that is another thing. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally taught this. To be victimized by Maya, there is possibility, just like Jai and Vijay. They were gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. They also fell down. Hiranyakashipu, Prabhupada makes that connection. So this fall down, there is possibility in any moment because we are very small. We can be captivated by Maya at any moment. We should be very, very careful. And if you fall down, then punishment is you make suicide. That's all. The next life we shall see. Satsarup Maharaj. But Srila Prabhupada in Nectar Devotion, it said devotion and service is so pure that there is no prayaschitta. Prayaschitta means atonement. No prayaschitta necessary. Just again engage in your service. Srila Prabhupada, yes, this is not prayaschitta. This is exemplary punishment. He was not liable to be punished, but they prayed that this should be done. This is an indication that prayed means this is Leela. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela. That this was his personal servant and he fell down, and that under the circumstances, he must commit suicide. Another sannyasi asking another question. Guru Kripa. He did not kill himself immediately. He waited for a year. Srila Prabhupada. Yes, he was waiting if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would accept him again. But when he saw that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not so lenient, he committed suicide. Vajrada Pikatora. Harder than the thunderbolt and softer than the rose. This is the position. Tamal Krishna. But Prabhupada, if you are as strict as if you are that strict, Prabhupada, no, I am not Chaitanya. I am not. Why are you comparing me? I'm an ordinary man. Guru Kripa had a very witty sense. Is it so in this kind of someone falls down, it means that he should commit suicide? Prabhupada, no. Guru Das, another humorous, witty fellow. We wouldn't have much of a movement then. Krishna, we're too attached to our bodies anyway, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, no. If he falls down, that is automatically suicide if he falls down. That means it is suicide. He has got the chance. If he falls down, that is suicide. Guru Kripa, spiritual suicide. Okay? Try to follow along. Prabhupada, spiritual suicide. One gets the chance of becoming eligible. We're going back to home, back to Godhead. And if he commits a mistake and it is stopped, is it not suicide? Okay, the interesting point here is that there are no more questions for Vishnu Jan Maharaj. The lengthy morning walk continues quite some time. But the interesting thing is that the next day, Vishnu Jan Maharaj did not come from the walk and was never seen again. And he was the one who asked the question. And it was told by many at the time, we were at the festival, that someone had seen Vishnu Jan or a sannyasi go out in a boat into the middle of the Ganges, and with the help of some boatmen, he committed suicide. Which seems to imply that he had fallen down. So he heard the rest of the conversation. He could understand that it was not necessary, yet he took that drastic step. He was a very determined preacher. He was a very charismatic individual. But he could apprehend that his situation was difficult for him to be always the object of attention, literally. Wherever he would go, he was the center of attention. Again, that charismatic. So this is not, so two things here. We could say that this, in the verse, in the purport here, Prabhupada also stresses the word anucharaha, means those who can immediately understand the purpose of their master. So this is sometimes given as the symptom of a disciple who has essentially understood how the spiritual master wants something to happen. He doesn't have to wait to be told to do this or do that. He realizes that the spiritual master wants, Prabhupada would, basically hint that he would like to see that this country, that there should be some preaching, and devotees would voluntarily commit themselves to doing something like that. And but not just preaching in that respect, but in any way, even in menial tasks. You didn't have to wait. You could understand that, that there are certain ways that Prabhupada liked to have his room arranged after cleaning. He was very particular. And so everything had to be in a proper place, and devotees could understand that. They also anticipated his needs. Prabhupada had particular, he didn't use a standard toothbrush. He would take a twig from a certain tree, and they would be stocked in his room. And there's many pastimes involved in that. One time, I remember we were in Henry Street, and we had a cutting room, which was just adjacent to, separated by a door in Prabhupada's bathroom. Prabhupada's bathroom was in the basement of the Henry Street Temple. He had his rooms on the ground floor, and then he would walk down the stairs, and there was a bathroom. And we were cutting the vegetables, and we were listening to, at that time it was probably the class, which was piped into the basement. And all of a sudden we heard this commotion. And, someone had come down the stairs, and then someone is running up the stairs. And sometimes we would also hear Prabhupada in the bathroom, but this wasn't Srila Prabhupada. And so then we inquired, what's going on? What's going on? And the servant had gone downstairs and he found the towel was bloody. So he ran back upstairs to see if Prabhupada had cut himself or what had happened. And he found that Prabhupada looked quite astonished at him and said, when you brush your teeth, sometimes blood comes. So a very simple thing, but the servant was very concerned. So this is just how the devotees always had that ready to do whatever was required to assist the spiritual master in any circumstance. So we should have this, everything we're doing here essentially is to develop the attitude as how to serve the spiritual master. We're reading Śrimad Bhāgavatam, we're studying the scripture, we're hearing these pastimes, but these pastimes are only beneficial to us if the conclusion that we arrive at is that I should be a firmly committed disciple to the spiritual master who ultimately has the vision that has been transmitted to him in a means that is very difficult for us to appreciate. But one time, Prabhupada also similarly said that a devotee asked Prabhupada, how do you see Krishna? Simple question. And Prabhupada responded, and this was interesting because the technology was still new. He said, like closed circuit television. Brand new technology. But Prabhupada was very familiar with these things. The devotees were using it. If you look on YouTube, you'll find some video from Prabhupada, mostly black and white, taken in Los Angeles to New York. In New York, it was taken by Pancharatna. And so there's, and the camera used to be right in the middle of the aisle. Sometimes Prabhupada was a little bit annoyed by it. Pancharatna had to figure out how to put it in such a way that it didn't obstruct Prabhupada's view of Radha Govinda. But this is not something that, someone may or may not understand or appreciate what is the relationship that the spiritual master has with Krishna. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hinted that he will send his Senapati Bhakt, his commander-in-chief, in order to deliver the fallen conditioned souls. So such a great soul is very rare. And occasionally, the temptation it is by those who are not so advanced to minimize, the position of the founder Acharya. But that would be a very grave circumstance, that would lead to utter destruction of one's spiritual life. So one has to be very careful. So Prabhupada commented, familiarity breeds contempt. So we were always very careful, even though we were associating with Prabhupada sometimes in very intimate ways, not to think that he's an ordinary man, because you're cleaning up after Prabhupada. It's like the blood on the towel. It's very easy to sometimes think, oh, well, he's just an ordinary person. But that's not, that ordinary has no meaning in relationship to a pure devotee. He's explaining his activities, he's performing his activities in conjunction with an extension of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the pure devotee we're speaking about, the Uttama Adhikari. Spiritual masters come in three. They can. Everyone here has already read Nectar Instruction, right? Especially I can understand in Gita Life and BYS, very studious. So they can be in Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. One can have a guru in any one of these levels. But one has to understand the difference. And so we were very fortunate to have this example of Srila Prabhupada. And that we see that all these disciples of Lord Shiva were also very much in tune with his desires. They didn't have to go back and run and ask Lord Shiva, should we follow your wife? No, they just immediately knew what to do, and they went and accompanied her. This was very, someone else might have been confused, but those who are genuine disciples are never confused. So this is something, and again, Symptoms of confusion are lack of commitment. People don't take something seriously, then they're a little bit hesitant. They're always trying to calculate, how does this benefit me? Right? The whole process here of everything we're doing here in chanting, Yesham Twantakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karma, we're trying to become free from past sinful activities. Right? So whatever you can do in order to accelerate that. So just like when you're scrubbing a pot, the more effort you put into it, the cleaner it is, the quicker everything is done. So if you're just taking spiritual life on a kind of a, slow train process, because sometimes people say, yes, it's not, it's a gradual process. It's only gradual for those who want it to be gradual. Again, you can accelerate this up to the maximum capacity that we have, whether we're young or old, simply by putting the effort into it. Right? Isn't that a common understanding? You only get out as much as you put into something. Everyone has that, but still sometimes we come to spiritual life and we're sort of like coasting. We're not really sure. We're just, maybe I should do a little of this, maybe I should do a little of this. It's not a Chinese restaurant. Not like you pick something from column A and something from column B, it's, you have to really drill down and focus that purification is the goal. Because we see that this is what is being emphasized by Srila Prabhupada. And maximum conversations, walks, lectures, purports. That the stress is there, but somehow or other we're not picking up the hint. Everything that's here, the whole temple is simply meant for our purification. And that requires action. It doesn't require, contemplation on what. There has to be that understanding that I must be engaged in devotional service. However, but if I'm only thinking about it all the time, I think I should do this, I think I should that, maybe I should do it, then the question of devotional service never comes. Where's the devotion? The devotion, one should literally be like a Formula One race car. You step on the gas pedal and it goes. There's no hesitation. You don't have to have somebody come up behind you and push you, jumpstart you, get out the cables and say you need a little juice. This is where, if anything had meaning, self-starting, devotional service is the epitome. We're here after millions of birds. Bahanam jamanamante ganavama papadyate. Millions of birds, many, many birds. So the symptom of that being there after many, many birds is that you're ready to go. Not ready, you haven't moved into the temple just to think about it. You've moved into the temple just to think about, I'm just going to try this out. Sometimes that's there. I remember sitting, as a brand new person listening to Prabhupada for the first time and being absolutely amazed how, everything was being perfectly explained. And according to, I wasn't just, just normal New York, person, I don't want to get into the descriptions, but how is it that the pure devotee was able to specifically, according to the time and circumstances, address someone's doubts and delusions without even knowing that person or having that person explain or ask questions? It's just, this was one of the descriptions in the Nectar Devotion that the spiritual master knows specifically, according to time and circumstances, how to deliver the disciple. Potential disciple. And literally we were delivered sitting in that class. That is the potency of the pure devotee. Is that all your questions are automatically answered without even asking. I mean, there's more questions, but the initial doubts are completely eliminated. So that there's that whatever hesitation was there was removed. And the opportunity to engage became easy. Because we'd already been washing Krishna's pots for some time. So the groundwork was there. Don't ever let anyone tell you that there's no benefit to washing Krishna's pots. Okay? Otherwise, what is the criteria? What makes one person qualified, another person not? You know? Even such a simple act as surrendering to do some menial service has such a great benefit. You know, the highest reward, who can imagine the highest possible reward from doing something so simple? In any case, that opportunity there was prefaced slightly by the conditioned mind that thought, well, I've been coming, I've been following, I've been serving in this way, and then somehow or other you get the opportunity to meet the pure devotee. But the mind still wants to put in its own 2 cents and says, well, you know, if you join now, what will happen? Maybe you'll have to leave, maybe this. You know, so there's that slight hesitation was there. But somehow or other, the intelligence was able to overcome that doubt and say, no, what is the loss? What is the loss? Spent so many years in the material world that literally I was thinking, I've been 23 years doing whatever in the material world. The least I could do is spend 23 months. You know. So that was the compromise that the mind and the intelligence arrived at that moment, sitting there on Henry Street. So, but it doesn't diminish. You know, if you had that determination then, why would you not have that determination now? If you're ready to surrender then, what changes in a person's future engagement? The only thing that changes is that the tendency is there to neglect the hearing and chanting, the continuous process, the Srinvata Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtan. It can never be neglected. One has to constantly be in touch with the spiritual master, with the purports, with Krishna, through those purports. And so that, it's just like everybody knows who's done any type of electrical work, you have the circuit is energized as long as it's being connected to the source of power. As soon as you turn up the switch, then there's no power to whatever it is, the TV, the light bulb, the computer. Even if there's a battery, it only lasts so long. So you cannot stop this process. It's not that now I've become self-realized. What does that mean, self-realized? Self-realized means that now I know my position in relationship to Krishna. Doesn't mean that now I'm independent, I don't have to listen to anybody. Prabhupada also gave that in Mayapur that time, when devotees, the river changes its flow, and sometimes the bank is high, sometimes the bank is low. So Prabhupada, everybody walked to the Ganges, and Brahmananda always figures prominently in some of these pastimes. Because Prabhupada was always dependent. Brahmananda was certainly the strongest of the disciples, big, stout. And so Prabhupada had to step up out of the Ganges onto the bank, and it was, at least probably 12, 18 inches. So he had to quite a step. Prabhupada is already elderly at this time. So, well, of course, Brahmananda is there to give Prabhupada a hand. And as soon as Prabhupada was on solid ground again, he threw Brahmananda's hand he released it like this. And it was interesting. And then he said that this is what some disciples do. They take shelter or they take assistance from the spiritual master, and then once they think they're situated, they reject him. This is around the time of that pastime with the disciple Nitai. He was Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor, translator. And he had asked, and he's, the Sanskrit editors, they have access to all the original texts that Prabhupada is also translating from. And other texts, sometimes they get distracted. They're thinking I'm following some line of nectar, but they don't realize that that nectar without proper administration is actually poison, not properly prescribed. And Prabhupada gave that very firm. He said, first deserve, then desire. So anyway, so Nitai made the fatal mistake of rejecting Prabhupada. He literally came to him and said that he wanted Prabhupada's blessings to seek another spiritual master. And they have these different distinctions. They call them rasacharyas or like this. He wanted to go deeper into what he thought was more than what Prabhupada was giving. He was thinking, I'm more advanced than all these students. Prabhupada is just giving these students the basics. What's wrong with the basics? The basics of self-realization. The basics of understanding Krishna and devotional service. Anyway, he wanted more. And Prabhupada basically said, I give you permission to go to hell. So it's a very instructive situation. We should never think ourselves separate. And we should always, if somehow or other the connection has become weak, the circuit has been broken, and we're no longer connected to that spiritual energy, then gradually we see the symptoms. It's very clear to those of us who have been around, who've, how when a person has being overwhelmed by confusion and doubts, that they're just putting forward, they're just throwing all these things out. Well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that, maybe I should do that. So it's obvious you don't know what to do. What is that? In the Bhakti program, a very famous program from 55th Street when it was just starting, Danavir Maharaj had started it in Los Angeles. And then he sent one of his men out to New York to replicate the process. So we started on 55th Street. So here, that devotee, Urjasvat, is a very charismatic Kirtaniya, very strong devotee from Los Angeles. So he came out, and then I became the assistant. So he was very expert at talking to these prospective, people who come in, same thing, get to Sunday feast. It was the precursor, forerunner to the darshan room and the lotus rooms and all these things. We had a separate little area. We would take them up and preach to them. And one of the most disarming things he could say, because some of the questions, they're just so, from where left field they came from. But the point is, he would say, look, if you have a question, it means you don't have an answer. So why don't you take the answer from Bhagavad Gita and Krishna? You're here, you have a question. I said, so there are answers. But if you're looking for something specific that only fits your conception, then how are you going to satisfy? How are you going to solve the problem of life? And the concomitant birth, death, disease, and old age. So, and many individuals were, at least their eyes were opened by that point that, yes, I'm here, I have questions, I don't have answers, so let's see what they have. Let's take this Bhagavad Gita and read it. So this is, this is our only hope, is to try to attract the conditioned soul long enough to put Prabhupada's books in their hands. That's all, just to capture them momentarily. We don't have to sit there. Prabhupada gave that, what will your 3 minutes talking do? And sometimes we get lost in that. You want to someone wants to engage and you fall into that trap. Meanwhile, there's 100 conditioned souls that have just gone by, 50 of whom could have gotten a book. And you're wasting time talking to one person who ends up not taking a book anyway. But you have to be very cautious about where you put your time and effort. Like that. The main thing is the book. That's the main thing. And understanding the purpose of the master. So this is this particular purport. And so we have to ask the spiritual master, the respective spiritual masters, what would you like me to do? What instruction will keep me connected to you? And so, for Prabhupada, he told us very simple, chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regular principles. Follow the temple authorities. It's very simple. We didn't have any complicated, various internal departments competing for resources. It was all very simple. Temple president was up on top, everybody was underneath. And everything went very smoothly for years. Not that I'm trying to put a plug in for the temple president, but that's just the way it was. It was very simple. So everyone is convinced now, right? There's no need to go home or no need to look for alternative methods of self-realization. There's no need to commit suicide. No need to fall down. These things are all part of the pastimes. The Bhāgavatam is presenting all these different scenarios for our instruction. It's all for our benefit. Whether it was Chota Haridas or Vishnu John Swami, it's all for our benefit. Sati is also the example, but in a different way. Because she wasn't following her husband. So this is. Anyway, the story is unfolding. The Bhāgavatam is so nectar. Every word, is just pregnant with meaning. But we don't always take the time. And the way that, in my experience, to experience that expanded content is to listen to Prabhupada giving these Bhāgavatam classes. And hear how he's the purport to that particular verse. And to see and to try to align oneself so that it actually comes out to understand that we have that same purpose. And to the extent that you align yourself, then you'll never go astray. That should be a simple understanding. And as soon as you misalign, there's so many things like, who was complaining? I think it was Uruguay who was complaining that the front end of the van is not properly aligned, and so it's wandering. So that's also like in our spiritual life. Sometimes we hit a bump, and it throws off our alignment. You have to go back to the temple mentor, whoever that may be, your confidant, and get an attitude adjustment, a mental alignment, a spiritual alignment. And so, you have to be careful. Of course, the best thing is to avoid the bumps. Usually you can see them coming. When they teach you driving, they don't tell you that you look down in front of the car. They tell you to look at the furthest point so that you can anticipate whatever could happen. Some crazy driver up there, an obstacle in the road, fork in the road. So you're looking down the road. You're not looking right in front of you. So spiritual life is also like that. You're trying to anticipate. You don't want to get caught by surprise. Maya can do that. All of a sudden, there it is. Temptation right in front of your face. And sometimes, and that's what happens. And that is the nature of a fall down. Because you weren't anticipating it. You didn't put your guard up. Just like if somebody's going to punch you in the face, sometimes you see it. It's called telegraphing. You don't have time to block it. So these things happen. You get knocked out. So don't get knocked out by Maya. She's telegraphing her every move. We've seen it through all the different, pastimes here. So there's really no excuse. But If you take shelter of the system, the society, the process, you will have adequate protection. You will have adequate protection. So that's why it's important to stay and develop these relationships with one another, so that your buddy, God brother, God sister can tell you, hey, Prabhu, I've seen you've missed Mangalarti 3 times in a row. What's going on? So this is just simple things, Any questions or comments or? You have to make sure the green light is flashing. It's at the bottom of that fuzzy thing.
Prabhu, could you say what was Srila Prabhupada's reaction? What did he say when he understood what Vishnu Jan Swami had done?
That's a different morning walk, but Prabhupada actually agreed that that was probably good for him, without saying it specifically like that at all. And, because he could understand that somehow or other he felt compromised. Vishnu Jan was a very sincere devotee. And he didn't like to be in that position where, what Pushta Krishna had said, for one who is known honor, dishonor is worse than death. And literally he was the most, you could say, the most popular person in the movement at that time, besides Prabhupada, practically. So it was very, yeah. He had, he used to give nectar devotion classes. Nectar devotion was regularly studied in the temples. Every day, you had in the morning Śrimad Bhāgavatam. In the evening, you had Bhagavad Gita and nectar devotion. Okay, not just Bhagavad Gita and nectar devotion. And so on one class he mentioned, he talked about, we're all coming from this background of, basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, that's how we grew up, 1960s, 70s. And so the question arose that, at times we're confronted by our material memories. And so he coined the term, he said this is impure reminiscence. In other words, we have Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. And then you have the opposite of that is impure reminiscence. In other words, a song pops up in my head from some concert 50 years ago. It's there. Something triggered it. Memories are triggered. Sound, sight, smell, anything can trigger a memory. And that memory is not, we're trying to make Krishna conscious memories. So after 50 years, hopefully you've got some stock of nice Krishna conscious memories. You can remember Prabhupada, you remember here. Everywhere you go in New York City, you can remember Srila Prabhupada, basically. Just like everywhere in India you go, you can remember Krishna. Prabhupada said that that's the benefit of taking birth in India. And so, unfortunately, according to our background, a lot of times something comes up and it triggers a memory that's not Krishna conscious. And so, Vishnu Jan coined that term, impure reminiscence. So he had a handle on all these things. It's not that he was unaware or he was naive or he was this or that. No, he knew exactly. And obviously something triggered in him this response. A situation, whatever it was, a fall down, a possible fall down, the desire not to fall down, the desire to just kind of like, I'm in the Dham, because it says that if one commits suicide in the Ganges, he achieves, the highest spiritual benefit. Not going necessarily back home, back to Godhead, but he's going to Vaikuntha. And so, you could think, well, better than, actually having some long-term problem, let me just, cash in my punya right now. So, that's a consideration. Not my consideration, but I want to be with Prabhupada as long as I can be. Sitaram has a question. You want to run that mic back to Sitaram, Prabhu?
And just an artist little comment is that in Vishnujan was so expert, but what about Apichet Surura Chaharu Vajate Mam Ananya Bhak Saru Reva Samantavya Samyak Vasito Hisaha. So this would have been very applicable for him to still be around. Thank you.
Yeah, Prabhupada, that was they quoted that, essentially, paraphrased it in that same conversation. That this is, it's not necessary, person is rightly situated. But, he obviously felt that in his case, it was the right course of action. It's not, I didn't have an opportunity to say, Maharaj, think twice about this, you don't need to do this, we like your association, don't. He did this in such a way that no one was even aware of it until his presence the next morning was noticeable by his absence. So, okay. Any other questions? So don't commit spiritual suicide. Don't commit suicide at all, but especially don't commit spiritual suicide. Human form of life is much too valuable. Much too valuable. You don't know when you're going to get it in. There's the hint. After many, many births. So Krishna is already kind of hinting to us. Look, you're here now. Don't waste this opportunity. Don't waste the opportunity. Yes, Bhakti Nick, one last question.
Sorry, this just came up, but wasn't there also another Leela where Lord Chaitanya had a disciple who was going to commit suicide, and he told him, "You're being a fool that you assume that that's your body"?
Sanatana Goswami. Yes, but Sanatana Goswami was not the intimate. He was obviously a disciple and a follower, but Chota Haridas was actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant. And Sanatana Goswami, and obviously, yes, so different instructions, and that's a good point. So Bhakti Nick is bringing up the incident where Sanatana Goswami, in his mind, never externally verbalized this, was thinking that because of his condition, he was afflicted by various health issues. He thought, and I'm impure, I'm not fit to be in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm going to throw myself under the wheel of the rock cart because, like the Gandhis committing suicide under the wheel of the rock cart, in parts, one goes back to Vaikuntha. Okay, don't take any. We're very careful about people jumping in front of the wheels of the rock cart. So don't even think about it. But he was thinking about it, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's, he knows everything. If the spiritual masters treat Kalagya, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the embodiment of the universal form, past, present, future, and everything in between. And so he approached him and says, "You cannot do that." He says, "You cannot do that." And of course, Sanatana Goswami was surprised that Mahaprabhu knows what I'm thinking. He says, "You cannot do that." He said, "This is not your body. This is my body, and I have, actions, activities. I have work to do through your body." And so that's, and that's also in the Bhagavad Gita. There's that shloka, nimitta matram bhava savyasachan. Just become an instrument. Krishna's telling Arjuna, just become an instrument. All these personalities on his back, they're already dead. I've already killed them by my hand. He said, you just become an instrument in this action, and work under my direction. And so, so Sanatana Goswami was an instrument of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as are we all. So don't use your body for anything else other than the service of the Lord. And don't be confused. And if you're confused, seek out that personality who can deliver you from that confusion, whoever that is. Any other questions? It's getting late, 9:15. I'm getting the signal from Bhakta Phil. He said, no, that's enough. That was the hand. He said, that's enough. Okay. Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Śrīla Prabhupada ki. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki. How beautiful they look. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.